Members, we're now going to move to item 12, AB 787, presented by Assemblymember Hernandez.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and the members. Assembly 787 takes off where Rand Martin left off. Rand Martin just recently shared in his opposition to the previous bill that charters are public schools managed by nonprofits, and that's what my bill seeks to ensure. 787 clarifies current law by stating that a charter school shall not operate or be operated by a for-profit corporation. I am in agreement with the committee's recommendation to prevent potential disruption of educational services, and I'll be taking the amendments to address those concerns. I want to thank the committee staff for working so hard and diligently on this matter. Current law says that charter schools may elect to operate as or be operated by a nonprofit public benefit corporation. For-profit corporations should not be in a position of running or managing an institution of public education. This leaves our schools in a dangerous and vulnerable situation where responsibilities to shareholders and profits take priority over students. These corporations soak up public funds and often direct those dollars out of state. It is good public policy for kids, schools, and for protection of public funds from this abuse. This bill is sponsored by the California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, and the California Labor Federation, and the California School Employees Association. With me here to speak in support of Assembly Bill 787 is Danielle Hodge, a special education teacher at CAVA, Jason Spadaro, an English teacher at CAVA High School, Tom Beeman, a Spanish teacher at CAVA's High School, and Tristan Brown on behalf of the California School Employees Association. So with that, please, if you'll indulge me, we'll start where my first witness.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hernandez. How many are here to testify on this issue? Raise your hands. We have a number of folks. We'll take the first four at the table, and then we'll ask for add-ons, me too, and then we'll move to opposition testimony. First witness in support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the State Senate Education Committee. My name is Danielle Hodge, and I'm a special education teacher with CAVA, a charter school that is essentially run by K-12, a for-profit corporation. I appreciate you allowing me to come here today and speak with you again about my support for AB 787. The truth is that this bill will not directly impact my school because K-12 has figured out how to run schools in California without operating the actual school. They figured out how to game the system by opening up a series of shell nonprofit corporations to run their schools. My school is managed by a nonprofit as if they were for-profit organization. So the stories that I'm here to share with you and my colleagues are here to share with you are stories of what happens at a school that is operated basically as a for-profit. I'm concerned that when a company puts profit over the quality of education provided, kids suffer. I'm a believer in our charter education system. Unfortunately, for-profit organizations have found a way to take advantage of our charter system. They're using our California taxpayer funds to line the pockets of executive officers and their shareholders, while robbing thousands of school-aged children of a free and appropriate public education. It is important that we revise the law and provide clear language that stops profiteers from robbing the state of California. These profit-centered organizations often lack the motivation to seek positive student outcomes. Instead, they game the system to get the greatest maximum profit. Instead of hiring appropriate support staff, they pass those duties on to teachers, administrative duties, printing, folding, stuffing envelopes, mailing advertisements are put on teachers, taking teachers outside of the classroom, reducing the amount of time teachers have to support their students. And the school centers their focus on items that may lead to potential K-12 administrators receiving bonuses, items that have nothing to do with student outcomes, like going through re-enrollment documentations, having satisfaction surveys that have to be completed 100% by every single student, when the satisfaction survey is really an advertisement for other K-12 curriculum that they can pay for. So I think that we really need to take a look at this. These have no correlation to student academic outcomes, and we would like to see this focus changed. The focus should be on student learning, not profit. After meeting with other charter educators in April, I found that CAVA is not alone with these issues. Many of these other charter schools are having similar issues. Charter educators have gone to their administration, to the for-profit corporations they work with, to the charter boards, to the authorizing boards, and to the authorizing county superintendents seeking resolution for many of these same issues. The boards and authorizers have neglected their oversight duty and allowed fraud and mismanagement to continue. Maybe one day there will be a bill that will stop operations like K-12 Incorporated from acts of educational fraud and sabotage that are currently permitted under the law. This is not that bill. This is a small step that clarifies current law that public tax dollars intended for public school children will not be handed over to private for-profit corporations who seek only to make a buck. I, a charter school teacher who calls on you, the committee, to support Assembly Hernandez and pass AB 787.
Hello, my name is Tom Beeman. I'm a high school Spanish teacher with the California Virtual Academies, the largest virtual charter school in California. Today I'm here to urge your support of AB 787. When profit takes priority in educational settings, student performance suffers. Instead of funding programs for materials, for student support, money is spent on corporate personnel, many of whom are not educators. Currently, students enrolled in our world language program are not provided headsets necessarily complete the spoken part of their assessments. Additionally, students are not provided English to target language dictionaries to assist them in completing their assignments. I believe these are both possible violations of a free and appropriate public education. K-12 is also using its profit to create the group California Parents for Public Virtual Education and are using California taxpayer money to fund a campaign to oppose AB 787. K-12 spends over $500,000 every year in advertising, with much of that budget coming from taxpayers in California. K-12 frequently advertises on television networks such as Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, as well as on social media such as Facebook and MeetMe.com, a popular social networking site for teens. By advertising on these networks, they appeal to at-risk students, a population to help increase their profit, as many of these students do not graduate on time. Additionally, these students are rarely withdrawn from CAVA despite not making progress or being compliant with enrollment requirements, so long as these students turn in enough work by the end of the semester to complete a grade of 60% or higher. Last month, as so many students graduated across the state of California, too many students from CAVA did not. Over the last 3 years, the average graduation rate in California is 78%. In CAVA, it's only been 36%, with as low as 16% in its worst year. Two major pitfalls that CAVA does encounter are the fact that we do not meet the eligibility requirements for University of California system enrollment and NCAA eligibility. According to the UC Admissions website, science courses must include a teacher-supervised hands-on lab component that accounts for at least 20% of class time, something CAVA does not currently offer, requiring many students to go to a California community college while still in high school to meet this requirement. Last year, the NCAA pulled its eligibility from 24 K-12 schools, including all of the California CAVA schools. This is believed to be as a result of students and teachers having insufficient access to one another, as well as insufficient interaction and class time between the two. The current teaching model at CAVA allows for only 3 one-hour live teaching sessions per week, with one additional pre-recorded lecture of about 20 minutes. The rest of the week, our focus is on clerical duties, such as obtaining master agreement signatures from families, contacting families for non-attendance, printing a mailing report card, and maintaining of student records across multiple databases, etc. Additionally, most teachers have 2 courses that they teach, therefore the live sessions per week must be spread across these 2 sessions, oftentimes resulting in a session being only offered every other week for a particular class. I would like to see authorizing school districts become more involved in the overall operations of CAVA, focus more on student success and less focus on K-12 profit gaining margins, teachers having a voice in how the school is operated, and an end to the overhaul that is done annually on how the school operates. Maybe one day a lawmaker will write a more comprehensive law that addresses the concerns that we have at CAVA. However, today, should AB 787 become law, little will change at CAVA because on paper we are run by a nonprofit corporation. But what is happening at CAVA is growing and morphing into other models, so it is critical that state lawmakers make it clear that public schools are not about making money. They are about giving students the skills they need so they have options in life. As a registered Republican, I encourage bipartisan support of this bill for the future of California, our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jason Spadaro, and I'm a second-year high school English teacher at California Virtual Academies, also known as CAVA. It's a charter school that provides instruction to students online. I come here today to urge you to pass AB 787. I believe this bill will bring much-needed reforms to California charter schools. I know that K-12 seems to think this would impact their operations in California. Would that be so bad? My colleagues and I have seen firsthand what happens at my school when profit is put before people. Putting an end to for-profit charter schools would benefit teachers as well as students. CAVA is a publicly funded school and receives the same amount of funding as traditional schools in California. However, our online school management, technology, curriculum, and materials come from K-12 Incorporated, a for-profit education company in Virginia. K-12's focus is on making a profit, not on the education of students enrolled in its schools. Focusing on profit comes at a cost to both student and taxpayer. K-12 currently operates online schools in 32 states. K-12 made a $55 million in profit in 2014 for providing an ineffective and inadequate education for thousands of California students. 85% of K-12's revenue is from public funds. For example, in 2012-2013 school year, more than $95 million in state education funding flowed to CAVA, and 49% of that funding was then paid to K-12. If the result of this bill passing was that our school would have to change the way that it operated so that this money flowed to students getting what they needed to succeed, would that be so bad? Last year, the CEO of K-12 made $4.2 million in compensation, while the average CAVA teacher made $37,000. The average California teacher makes more than twice that amount. I consider it a great disservice to me and all my colleagues that we are denied our fair share of the American dream due to our low salaries, far below average. The emphasis on profit over people has caused many CAVA teachers to struggle each month just to make ends meet, with some forced to take on a second job. Low pay also sends a bad message to students about the value of education. If this bill meant that CAVA would pay competitive salaries that would recruit and retain the best, would that be so bad? Teachers are already not paid enough considering what we contribute, but we at CAVA are paid less than half. K-12 Incorporated pockets the rest. High teacher turnover is another problem at our school. Many of our teachers feel overworked, overwhelmed, and underpaid. As a result, many quit because of the extreme stress. If AB 787 forces change, would that be so bad? Teacher turnover is a problem because it creates instability that hinders the educational process. With instability, students suffer, resulting in lower student achievement and lower test scores. It is very hard for students to build meaningful relationships with their teachers when they are constantly faced with the threat of getting a new teacher. Our faculty cannot build meaningful relationships for collaboration when teacher turnover is high. And the constant influx of new teachers makes it very hard to build a well-run school. The loss of institutional memory is detrimental to our school performance overall. We're unionizing to force changes in how CAVA operates, and change is needed. However, AB 787 will not have an impact on our school. Why? If you go to K-12's website and hit the link for the schools they partner with in California, you will see a list of nonprofit corporations that money passes through so that K-12 can function in our state. If you seek quality education over profit for charter school students and better pay for charter school teachers, I urge your aye vote on AB 787. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. My name is Tristan Brown from the California School Employees Association. It's been interesting to think about how to testify on this bill, not for its complexities, but because of the self-evident principles that the bill is founded upon. I won't belabor the points that you've heard about the point of public funds being for public use. We know that charter schools are public schools. We know that they are supposed to fulfill a public utility and provide free education for our society. I'd like to just reiterate one point, however, despite any feelings you may have regarding the point of profits and it as a motivator, it has no place in public education. There is a fiduciary duty when you're a for-profit corporation to place profits and your shareholders above everything else. Otherwise, you are not operating within that duty and you are subject to liability. For this reason, the code was established to say that in order to operate a charter school shall be operated by the school district or by a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation in California. That is where the code ends, and that is what we believe current law is. This bill would simply reiterate that point, that you may not operate as or by a for-profit corporation. And also importantly, this would not require any charter schools to close. We find that this might be a misconception. The bill gives adequate time for these organizations to reassess and reorganize and comply with the law and operate as nonprofit education centers and provide and meet their mission and provide education to students. It is a simple bill, and we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support of the bill, please just identify.
Madam Chair and members, Erin Evans Budum on behalf of the Association of California School Administrators in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, proud co-sponsors, and we urge an aye vote.
Thank you.
Seth Bramble here on behalf of the California Teachers Association, proud to co-sponsor, urge your aye vote.
Leilani Aguinaldo Yee on behalf of the Los Angeles Unified School District. With the amendments taken out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee, we remove our opposition and now would support the bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Ron Rapp on behalf of the California Federation of Teachers. We're a proud co-sponsor of this bill, and we urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Peter Manette, kindergarten teacher from Nevada County, speaking in support.
Jeff Johnston, high school English teacher from Lodi, strongly support.
Mark Holtzbeck, special education teacher, charter educator, strongly in support.
Libby Sanchez, Laborers Local 777, in strong support.
Okay, any others in support of the bill? Is there opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Ron Shea Jones on behalf of K-12 and the California Virtual School Academies that we work with. Appreciate the testimony you just heard, but a couple of points of clarity. Well, when you're talking about, just for K-12, the company, the profits that people make, they are in 32 states, but they also work with 2,000 school districts across the nation. K-12 is also an international company. So when you're talking about compensation, you're not talking about compensation just from California. California represents less than 10% of the ADA that they work with in the country. That's number one. Number two, the California Virtual Academies are all non-classroom-based charter schools, which means they operate under the SB 740 regulations. Under the SB 740 regulations, you have to spend 80% of your revenues on instructional services and 40% of your revenues on certificated employees. The fact that one of our teachers said that they would like more classified employees, we would too. We would love to partner with the sponsors of this legislation to relax those regulations so we can hire more classified employees. But every time we try to do that, they come out opposed and we're not able to complete those efforts. But we would love to do that. In terms of the legislation just on its face, our question solely revolves around the question of operate and what will that mean. I understand the for-profit, nonprofit issue, but I would remind everyone that in the budgets we have seen in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of one-time funds. We've seen school districts, charter schools, other schools purchase Chromebooks, iPads, computers, laptops, all from for-profit companies. So if that's the issue, then I think the bill needs to come to, there needs to be some kind of amendments to determine what for-profit you can purchase with or contract with, what for-profit you can't. Additionally, and I want to emphasize this, K-12 has worked in the state of California for over a decade and a half. We have never had a problem with any authorizer, any of the Department of Education's review of schools we work with, any issues. So some of the horror stories that are testified to, though I appreciate everyone's concern, they just aren't based in fact. We are not running off with millions of dollars of profits from the state of California. With less than 18,000 ADA in the state of California, we can't even generate millions of dollars of profits, let alone funding for our students. So with that in mind, I would urge the defeat of this measure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. On behalf of the tens of thousands of California families attending a public, virtual, or blended learning school, we respectfully oppose Assembly Bill 787. My name is Dr. Nicole Conragan, and I'm the president of the California Parents for Public Virtual Education, which is a volunteer organization who has parents with students in these schools, in the virtual charter schools, in the blended learning schools. And we advocate on behalf of online education, quality curriculum, and stable funding. While traditional schools may have a great environment for most, some children simply need another option. And we parents need to have that available to us. We need these public, virtual, and blended learning schools for our children. We believe that Assembly Bill 787 undermines a parent's right to choose what education option is best for our students, for our children. This puts individual online charter schools at risk of closure and has the potential of displacing tens of thousands of students in California. If online charter schools are forced to close, where are these kids going to go? And how are the individual school districts going to deal with our children's unique learning needs? I hope you'll keep our concerns under consideration and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Rand Martin on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. When this bill passed out of Assembly Appropriations, we immediately went to Mr. Hernandez and said, you know what, we actually support in concept the balance of the bill which deals with the for-profit issue. Now, we would like to work with you on language that clarifies what operated by and operated as means. I mean, currently as one sentence, it is open to substantial interpretation by the state, by school districts, by for-profits and nonprofits. We provided them with language, which we thought was plenty of time before the policy deadline for their consideration, which simply does define operated as and operated in by. And the most important distinction it makes is it says that if you're a for-profit and you have one of three things, you govern the budget of the charter school, you employ its teachers and other employees, or you have governance control of the charter school, then you cannot operate in the state of California. Those are the three key elements of what governance and control of a charter school is. So if you do any one of those, you would not be able to operate. With that language, we would support the bill. We think it is a policy that deserves to be part of the California Charter Schools Act. Unfortunately, those amendments have not been accepted, and the bill in print is what's before you. we think it opens up a lot of questions about what it actually means, not only for charter schools, but extension, as Mr. Jones indicated, to traditional school districts who are also contracted for services that could be construed as operated as or operated by, but are not being held to the same standard as charter schools. Again, we urge the committee to accept the amendments that we've shared with each of you and with the author and move the bill forward in that form. This is the last chance. It goes to the floor from here. We think this committee is the best place to work out the details of this bill and move forward with a policy that works for everybody in California. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Dr. Richard Savage, and I am Executive Director at California Connections Academy Schools. I work for 3 nonprofit boards that operate 4 schools. Our 2 largest schools have API scores of 809 and 791, respectively. We currently have 4,000 students all over the state of California. I'm here to tell you a story today about a student whom I will call Cameron. Cameron is like many of our students that needed a school of choice that would be able to meet his unique needs. Left abandoned by his addict mother before he could talk. He was raised, or is currently being raised by his maternal grandmother. Physically handicapped herself, she has struggled with Cameron's emotionally disturbed mood swings and the fact that he was behind academically at school and was not fitting in socially as the victim of several acts of bullying. Grandma did not know what to do, and her local school was not responding the way that she needed them to. She found us 2 years ago and enrolled Cameron into our school. Due to Cameron's relationships with his teacher and the structure of our program, Cameron has maintained above average academic success in each of the last 4 semesters with California Connections Academy. He proudly holds up a printed copy of an honor roll certificate and sends me a picture each semester. The satisfaction and the happiness in his eyes are priceless. Cameron is not alone. We have many students that are unique and are attending our schools because they are similar to, if you'll excuse the metaphor, puzzle pieces that do not quite fit into the grand puzzle of brick and mortar traditional schools and are in need of something different. It was our nonprofit school board's decision to contract with Connections Academy to provide the myriad services that they do for our children. I'm afraid that Assembly Bill 787 will be a huge disruption to the academic services of our children and the services that they've become accustomed to. I cannot help but feel that the AB 787 will take local control away from our sponsoring school districts and will in turn prohibit our schools from best meeting the needs of our children as we have dutifully done so for the last 11 years. I'm going to go ahead and say this too. I detect a bit of a trend here that this bill targets a specific entity, and I want to make sure that the committee understands that there are other schools like mine that are going to get caught up in this in the crosshairs of this situation, and I don't see the need for the state to implement policy. I think that the authorizing school boards should manage the charter schools that they're authorized. So, thank you.
Thank you. Others opposed to the bill? Let's make some room here at the table, please.
Madam Chair, Bill Lucy with Ed Voice. We're opposed to the bill and want to highlight a few things to address some of the testimony that you've heard already with regard to the issues of substance in terms of pupil outcomes. Those can already should and must be addressed by the authorizers. So where there are issues of concern about dropouts, about the issue of providing curriculum in A through G and so on and so forth, there are ample authorities in the code already for local education agencies acting as the authorizer, the county superintendent of schools, the state superintendent of public instruction, and the State Board of Education to immediately revoke, and even revoke without opportunity for appeal on allegations that were brought before you today. With regard to the issue of contracting for services that originate, the support of which are from public funds, I would point out that this would carve out a separate distinction for charter schools in the way it's drafted from regular traditional bricks and mortar schools that are able to go buy iPads, all kinds of things to expand the digital highway, textbooks, test publishers, billions of dollars that go to for-profit agribusiness for the school lunch programs, facilities, you go down the list of for-profit entities that are receiving public funds that are supported through taxpayers' money to serve children. The fundamental question of charter schools in terms of the construct of the law and the governing structure is ultimately whether or not they're serving children. And the policing power for that, the legislature and the voters have decided should go through the local authorizing agencies and ultimately through the review and appeals process through the county superintendent of schools and the State Board of Education. Finally, we would point out that the crosshairs fight that's going on here it needs to be put forward, since this is a bill that's one step away from the floor, is that this bill doesn't address the actual problems that were being raised. The governance structure and the financial structure of the school in question is a nonprofit. And so at some point, people have to say, hold on a second, and what are we actually doing here? And there can be severe unintended consequences, and we recommend strongly that you hold the bill in committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Souza, and I've been a volunteer board member at Connections Academy for the past 10 years. I've been the president of the board for a number of years. I became a board member when my son was having trouble in junior high school. He decided that socializing was more important than anything else on his agenda for the day. After numerous visits to the principal's office, I went to an information session, found out about Connections Academy, and thought we'd give it a try. Turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to my son. He went from a 1.0 grade point average to a 3.5 grade point average. Granted, it was a challenge getting that done in the house, but we made it happen. And I believe so strongly in this program that I maintained my board membership on a volunteer basis, and I volunteered thousands and thousands of hours to this school for the last 10 years, and I plan on continuing to do it. And what we've done is every year we look at our contracts and we look at our options, and I've done this in business. I've got a bachelor's degree in business. I've ran businesses. That's one of my expertise was running small businesses, and we've contracted out our services. I did the same thing when I ran companies. We contracted out payroll. We contracted out our safety programs. We contracted out a lot of things because we just didn't want to put the manpower into it and couldn't afford it, and they could do it cheaper because they had many more customers than we had. So that's basically what we're doing with Connections is we're looking at our contracts every year with them. We're looking and doing our due diligence. That's our job. That's what we were put on the board to do. That's why we continue to be on the board, is to do that due diligence. And we look at those contracts every year and we try to decide, are we doing a disservice to the children? Are we keeping the money in the classroom? And that's why we do it on a volunteer basis. We won't take any money from that school. I refuse to allow any board member to take a dime from that school. The kids deserve this money, and that's what we've done. We've looked at Connections, we've looked at what they can provide for us, and we've done the math, and it makes sense. They save us money, and we put that money back into the school. We do the field trips, we do the proms, we do graduations, we do all of these things that these kids need to socialize, but at the same time provide a quality education. We've got kids going to the academies at the Air Force Academy and other places, being accepted into high university, Berkeley, for example. We're proud of these kids. I love to go to graduation. It's one of the favorite things I get to do. I love putting my signature on a diploma. I think it's fantastic. But if we take that ability away from these school districts to save money, and we start hiring all this and have all this overhead, and we all know how much that can be in business, that money's coming right out of the classroom, right out of the quality of education we're providing for these children. I know what we do at Connections. I'm not sure what they do at K-12. I'm not sure what they do at CAVA. I can only speak for Connections. And I strongly believe in this program. My son's 22 years old right now, and I still do this, and I will continue to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Eric Premack, Charter Schools Development Center. We're also in opposition. The bill appears to be, even by the proponent's own admission, something of a proxy fight for some labor issues that should be resolved in another setting. We don't think this is a big issue, or we don't really see a problem here in need of a fix. This seems to be a problem, a fix in search of a problem, and therefore we oppose it. Thank you.